Gus Fring was a man who played the long game better than anyone in the drug trade. He built his empire on meticulous control, calculated patience, and a ruthless ability to remove threats without hesitation.
Ustedes no tienen a nadie más por quien pelear. Llenen sus bolsillos o váyanse en paz. O vengan a pelear conmigo y mueran.
He never made a move unless he had analyzed every angle and reduced every risk to near zero. His restaurants were spotless, his supply chain airtight, and his reputation within the criminal underworld unmatched for professionalism. He wasn't just a drug lord. He was a businessman who treated his illegal operation like a Fortune 500 company. Against ordinary rivals, Gus's style was unstoppable, but Walter White wasn't an ordinary rival.
Say my name, Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Walt's personality was built around volatility, ego, and a willingness to destroy himself if it meant taking his enemy down. And in the end, that one factor, unpredictability, is the only reason Gus lost. Every other opponent Gus faced played by the same unspoken rules of rational self-interest. Hector Salamanca and the cartel bosses might have been violent, but they still operated in predictable ways. They valued territory, money, revenge, and power, and they acted within the bounds of those motivations. Gus understood these drives and could manipulate them over time. He played Hector by keeping him alive and humiliated rather than killing him outright, knowing it would eat at him. He dismantled the cartel by slowly poisoning their leadership, securing Jesse as his new cook, and removing competition piece by piece. These strategies worked because his enemies were trapped within the framework he had mastered. But Walt refused to be trapped in that framework. From the moment Gus decided that Jesse Pinkman was the future and Walt was expendable, he set himself on a path toward a battle he couldn't win. Gus assumed that by giving Jesse responsibility, respect, and stability, he could sever Jesse's bond with Walt. On paper, this was sound strategy. Walt belittled Jesse, lied to him, and constantly put him in danger. Gus treated Jesse as a professional and gave him a clear role in the organization. Over time, Gus expected Jesse's loyalty to shift permanently. And for a while, it worked. Jesse began to see Gus as a mentor figure. But Gus underestimated the emotional complexity of Jesse's relationship with Walt. It wasn't just about respect or money. It was about a twisted sense of partnership, shared trauma, and dependency. Walt understood how to exploit that bond, and Gus didn't. The turning point came with the Brock poisoning. Walt's decision to poison a child was something Gus never would have considered, not because he was incapable of cruelty, but because it was irrational from his perspective. Killing or harming a child brought unnecessary attention and offered no strategic benefit in his view. Gus assumed no one would cross that line without self-destructing in the process. Walt crossed it deliberately, knowing it would convince Jesse that Gus was a monster who had to be stopped. This single act undid months of Gus's work with Jesse. Jesse's loyalty swung back to Walt instantly, and with it, Gus lost the one advantage he believed would guarantee Walt's removal. Gus's other fatal vulnerability was Hector Salamanca.
Last chance to look at me, Hector.
To Gus, Hector was a trophy of victory, a living reminder that he had destroyed the cartel's power. Gus visited him to gloat, confident that the old man posed no threat. These visits broke Gus's usual discipline, but Hector's humiliation was too satisfying for Gus to resist.
A crippled little rata. What a reputation to leave behind.
That pride created the opening Walt needed. Walt knew that Hector hated Gus more than anyone else alive.
I know how badly you want to see me dead, but I'm willing to bet that I know a man whom you hate even more.
And that he would be willing to die if it meant taking Gus with him. The plan hinged on one crucial assumption, that Gus would feel safe visiting Hector in person. And Gus did. Gus didn't see it coming because it wasn't within the range of possibilities he had considered. The same man who once detected danger in a parking lot and walked away from a meeting with Walt now failed to sense the biggest threat of his career. That's because this threat didn't fit into his model of the world. He believed in predictability. Walt weaponized unpredictability. Gus's inability to adapt to an opponent like Walt becomes even clearer when you compare how he handled previous conflicts. With the cartel, he waited decades for the perfect moment.
Salud.
That plan worked because every step relied on predictable human behavior. Gus knew that offering a gift of expensive liquor would lower their guard. He knew they would drink to excess as a show of dominance. These calculations were flawless because his enemies acted exactly as he anticipated. Walt didn't. Whenever Gus tried to push him into a corner, Walt's reaction was explosive and irregular. He continued to treat him as if he could be outmaneuvered through conventional pressure.
Or else you'll do what?
Mike warned Gus early on that Walt was trouble, suggesting they get rid of him before he caused more damage. Gus ignored those warnings because he trusted in his own ability to control the situation. Walt's unpredictability wasn't just in the big moves. He oscillated between pleading for his life and making veiled threats. This made him difficult to read and impossible to box in. Walt's victory wasn't about superior resources, manpower, or even intelligence. It was about using moves that Gus didn't think anyone would make. It was the only reason. In Gus's mind, the only rational move for Walt after being sidelined from the lab was to disappear.
Call anonymous.
You call anonymously!
I can't. They know me. They know my voice. They'll know me. Please, you gotta do it for me. I'm begging you.
Gus could not comprehend that someone would destroy themselves as long as they took him down in the process.